Chicago-born Jeffery Deaver knew he was bound for a career as an author, but he had a few stops to make along the way. He worked as a journalist and an attorney, with a gig as a folk singer thrown in for good measure, before settling into his true vocation. He penned his first novel on the long commute to and from work on Wall Street. Manhattan is My Beat was published in 1988, kicking off a career that includes 29 novels and 5 series to date. His career kicked into high gear with The Bone Collector, featuring quadriplegic detective and forensic specialist Lincoln Rhyme, which was adapted for screen with Denzel Washington in the lead role. The novel also spawned the current NBC series, Lincoln Rhyme, The Hunt for the Bone Collector. 2 other novels, A Maiden's Grave and The Devil's Teardrop, have also been adapted for television. In 2019, Deaver introduced reward seeker Coulter Shaw in The Never Game, which Publishers Weekly hailed as a superb, twisty suspense, and the AP raved that Deaver is a genius of manipulation and deception. Now, just days after the ending of The Never Game, Shaw is back, trading the concrete and glass of Silicon Valley for the wilds of Washington State, where a dangerous secret awaits among a mysterious sect who want to keep their secrets buried. Deaver's fans will hope the Goodbye Man is not Coulter Shaw's last farewell.
Hey everybody, this is Jeff Deaver, and I'm doing a shout out here for Crew Reviews. Watch them, love them. Doesn't get any better than this.
Boys, want to thank Jeffery Deaver for coming on the show, and welcome to the Crew Reviews.
Hey. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. Well, and gentlemen, thank you so much for this
beautiful looking drink.
Virtual book tour.
Mm-hmm.
You introduced readers to reward seeker Coulter Shaw in last year's The Never Game. Now in The Goodbye Man, you've taken him from the Silicon Valley setting and put him into the wilds of Washington State. Can you give our viewers a little bit of taste of what he's in store for?
Sure, and I'll back up a little bit if I can. I heard once there are 2 types of stories, 2 archetypal stories. One is that someone goes on a quest, and that would be Lord of the Rings, for instance. Or a stranger comes to town. And that, I think of the classic Western, both a book and a movie, Shane, by Jack Schaefer, and in the movie starring Alan Ladd Jr. I always loved, well, I like both of them. I'm a big nerd when it comes to Lord of the Rings. I can actually speak Elvish, but I'm not going to do that because I'm with your viewers too much. But I love most of all the idea of the gunslinger coming to town. Mm. And for your viewers who are not familiar, Shane is in fact a gunslinger in the 1800s. He comes to town when there's a war between the good farmers and the bad cattle baron. And so what happens, he sides with the good guys, not surprisingly, wins the day, and sorry for the spoiler, rides off into the sunset. Well, I've always liked that. My main character that your viewers may be familiar with is Lincoln Rhyme from The Bone Collector.
Yep.
I'll always write those books. Never going to kill him off. I'm working on one right now, as a matter of fact. And if I could turn the computer around and show you the screen, which I can't because I'm on the computer, you'd see where the new book, we're pretty far along with. I wanted to do something that was, in a way, the antithesis of Lincoln Rhyme, create a new series. And what is more antithetical to Lincoln Rhyme than somebody who travels all the time, because Lincoln, being disabled, cannot travel that much. And he's an intellect when it comes to evidence, forensics. Well, I wanted to do somebody who really wasn't into evidence, therefore was not a policeman. So what he does is he travels, Coulter Shaw, travels around the country in his Winnebago, a la the horse in Shane. And what he does is he looks for rewards that people have offered, maybe for an escaped prisoner, or a suspect, a murderer or a kidnapper who's gone on the lam, or in some cases, a civilian, parents offering a reward for a missing child. And often the police don't get involved. They think maybe the kid's run off. There's no evidence of foul play. And so what happens is that he goes into town and gets involved in the crime, trying to solve the reward. Okay, trying to win the reward. Okay, The Never Game was about a murder in Silicon Valley, a series of murders. He was involved in that. And the day after The Never Game ends, he launches into a new reward investigation in Washington State, tracking down 2 extremists who have shot up a church burned a cross in front of it, and then disappeared. And he takes off after them.
Wow.
So as you just said, the Goodbye Man, it starts shortly after the events of the Never Game. Did you already have that story in mind when you were writing the Never Game?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about technique if you like. I'm a plotter. The world of writing is divided into two camps, plotters and pantsers. Not that easy to say after a couple sips of I think I acquitted myself fairly well there.
We'll try that again at the end of the show.
No, I'm not going to say. No, I'm not even going to say my name at the end of it. Well, a plotter like myself is an outliner. I spend months outlining the book. The outline for the Goodbye Man was about 140 pages long, and that's before I write a single word of prose. And as opposed to that is the pantser, and that is going by the seat, writing by the seat of the pants, of course. And it's just a subjective thing. What are you most comfortable doing? Kyle doesn't outline. Harlan Coben don't. Stephen King doesn't. I'm just more comfortable doing it. And I do tell my students when I teach, if you're not a seasoned writer yet, it's better to plan things out ahead of time. Not to the extent I do, but it's good just to have a direction, know where you're going. Right. And so I have not only the book itself plotted out. I plotted the Never Game. I plotted the Goodbye Man. I'm in the middle of writing the third book in the Coulter Shaw series. That outline is done now, but I have an arc of the stories themselves, so that and in fact the next book, untitled as yet, the third book in the Coulter Shaw series, will begin 8 hours after the Goodbye Man ends. Cool. Because we have to know all this ahead of time. We write for the readers. We have to make sure the reader has a good time with our books. And that means we have to do what like an airplane engineer does. Airplane engineers want the passengers to have a good time, that is, survive. Or to the extent you still can get a meal and a drink on an airplane, and they give you something other than the peanuts. So put the kitchen in anyway.
Right.
The engineers want the passengers to have a good time. The pilot wants the passengers to have a good time. I'm the pilot. I'm the engineer. So I want to plan everything out to make sure the story works for them. And so I know the arc of that story. And the first three books in the Shaw series are going to be a trilogy. And that will end the next book will end on a very tidy arc that began in the Never Game. I'm hesitating because I don't want to give away.
Yeah, exactly.
But from then on, and I'll be writing alternating a Lincoln Rhyme book and a Coulter Shaw book for the foreseeable future. Then he's just going to get on his Winnebago horse and ride into town, and there'll be a bunch of excitement with some of the characters from the first three books. But that arc will pretty much be closed, and new arcs will open up, and he'll be, Alan Ladd Jr. putting on his 6-gun and riding into town, then riding out of town.
Nice. Before I forget, I watched the last half of Shane last night. I was flipping through channels, and as is my custom, if it's on, I will watch it. And so, I watched the end of it again.
What a show, yeah. Shane, come back.
Right.
Hey, Jeff, as Sean alluded before, there was a stark change in the setting. Was that simply just a function of creating a fresh story, or were there setting specific challenges you wanted to throw at your protagonist?
I changed everything in this book. We as authors are up against a lot of competition now that didn't used to be the case. And I, as someone who thinks Breaking Bad was maybe the best thing I've seen on television, I binged on that.
Yeah.
May I digress for just a moment?
Love it.
Absolutely. With some advice? Never, ever drink 2 or 3 glasses of wine while you're watching your favorite show's conclusion, the episode that ended Breaking Bad. What does that mean? That means you immediately lose all inhibition and go on eBay and buy a souvenir. And if you're involved in this business, you may know, but for those of your viewers who don't, to recoup costs, production companies and studios often sell the props that were in the show. And you don't make a lot of money on it, but I understand his Plymouth Aztec, Walter White's Plymouth Aztec, sold for $80,000. I mean, you can still made them. You could buy a new one for next to nothing, but people love the show that much. I bought my my souvenir was a Los Polos Hermanos batter fried bucket that was featured in the vehicle where Mike Ehrmantraut got his ear shot off. Now, if you haven't seen the show, none of this means anything, but I suspect some of your viewers have and will revere me as God for owning one of these props now. So anyway, what do I mean by this? There's streaming TV, there's video game, there's Spotify, Pandora, there is music you can listen to from now until the year 3000. That's all fine. I participate in all of those things, but I really do believe that a novel, well, let's say the written word, whether you read it, listen to it, or it's a full form novella or short form short story, it's the most engaging emotional experience we can have with a creative product. And why is that? Because we, as the consumer, as the reader, participate with the author. Breaking Bad, we know what Walter White looks like. We know what Hank. We know what Skyler. I'm watching Ozark right now. We know the Jason Bateman.
I love that show.
That's great. I just love it. Watching Mrs. America, the story about Phyllis Schlafly on Hulu. I think it's FX, but I'm seeing it on Hulu. Well, but I sit back and I enjoy it. I'm captivated by it, but I don't really participate in it. But books we participate in, and that's why the takeaway from a book emotionally is that much greater. Well, but we're also up against this competition like Minecraft and Angry Birds and music, where we just sit back and we have our beer and we don't really have to participate. So what I'm doing with my new approach to writing, I'm calling it the streaming style of writing, to pick up readers who may say, I like to read, but books are so long and you have to think about these words and read them. You have to understand all the words.
It's effort.
It's an effort, exactly. But the effort is worth it. So what I'm trying to do is produce a book that when somebody picks up, they're going to read it very quickly as if they were streaming. So what does that mean stylistically? The books are shorter than my prior books. I've written about 43 novels, I guess. Up until now, they've been fairly long, maybe 115 to 130,000 words. Now my books are going to be about 100,000 words. Their chapters are going to be shorter. The paragraphs are going to be shorter. Yeah. There's more dialogue, more action, but by action, I don't mean gunplay. I mean conflict scenes. That could be emotional, romantic scenes, but they're going to be less introspection and less thought and less ponderous dialogue. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but I have had some response that people like it. They read it quickly, and my books, almost all of them take place over the course of about 2 days or so, and have lots of reversals. The end of an episode of Breaking Bad, there was a big surprise. I end my chapters that way, and then a big surprise ending, followed by another big surprise ending, followed by yet another big surprise ending, because that's kind of my trademark.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you're following the market pretty strong there. It sounds to me like that's going to work beautifully.
It's a business. It's a business.
Yeah, it is.
You've published sold over 50 million copies worldwide?
Yeah, about that.
It's hard to even grasp.
Well, you certainly earned your ability to kick back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Have the motivations changed from your early days to continue the steady pace of releases, or does it really fall back to the simplicity of wanting to just tell a good story?
Well, it's basically that, telling a good story. I said I wasn't going to talk politics, but I can't resist this. Imagine, I get paid to make up things, and I don't live and work in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky. I enjoy writing. I have learned how to craft a very circumscribed type of story. I mean, if I were to write a Game of Thrones story, I'd be lost. I have no idea how to do that. If I were to write a vampire book or a Harry Potter, I'd be lost. But I can write a crime book, and I know it's going to find an audience. And I work very, very hard to make people happy. You know, my endings tend to be happy endings. I think it's important when you write fiction to have a satisfying ending, and it could be a sad ending. It's, you know, Hamlet. Basically, Hamlet is Reservoir Dogs, except they're wearing tights.
Right.
So there's crime, there's intrigue, there's betrayal, and everybody dies at the end of the play or at the end of the movie. That's both valid. I mean, that's all wonderful. I kind of prefer happy endings, though. I want my readers to smile and say, "Oh, I survived that roller coaster. That was just great." But because I got such pleasure out of reading and going to movies when I was a kid, I want to pass that along. And I was a nerd. Oh, I was an incredible nerd. You know, nowadays, if you're a nerd, it means you've got $1 billion in stock.
Yeah, you're living large.
Yeah, well, exactly. And there's, you know, like a wing named after you at Stanford or Carnegie or something like that. But no, I was a nerd. Like, it was a Leave It to Beaver nerd. And I said that once at an event, and this girl came up to me afterwards and she said, "Mr. Deaver, that's wrong. Justin Bieber is not a nerd."
Oh my God.
And I had to explain to her that no, there's a TV show from the 1950s called Leave It to Beaver, and it was about a nerdy kid, and she just stared at me with glazed eyes. That's the kind of nerd I was. But I had, you know, I didn't have any talent for sports, but I did have a love of books and movies. And I thought, well, I'm not alone even now. And so that's what I want to do. I want to tell stories. My motivation is to do that and get the word out that these things called books are pretty fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, your output is inspiring and humbling at the same time. I'll say that. And on the Leave It to Beaver thing, just to let you know, sort of sad news. Eddie Haskell passed away. The actor that played Eddie Haskell passed away today.
Oh no, is that right?
Yeah.
Found that out a little bit ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, or curious you mentioned that, because my book I'm writing right now, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a character who is who puts on a big front to the police and to everyone else, and he looks like such a good guy. And I was thinking of describing him, but we know what's really going on. We readers know what's really going on. And thinking of describing him as an Eddie Haskell character, because he was was her name June?
Yep, June.
Yeah. He was all very charming. Oh, what a lovely sweater that is, Mrs. Cleaver. And we know what's going through his mind. He has like evil intentions. Not evil intentions, but he's not really the nicest kid in the world. And I thought, you know what? Nobody would get that nowadays. Nobody would get that.
Yeah.
I mean, some of my demographic would. It's a little bit older, but I have many readers who are under 60, under 50. So that would not work. But sad news. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I actually use that reference often. Like when my wife and I are talking about a certain kid that our kids went to school with, I use the Haskell reference quite a bit. Let's get back to your Coulter Shaw for a little bit. You mentioned that he's a reward seeker, and you described a little bit of what that entails. Where the heck did that come from, though? What inspired you? Where did you see that nugget? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what is his motivation? Is it money? Is it the challenge? Is it helping people? Or is it a stew of all those things?
Sure. I'm kind of like a sponge. I absorb things. I don't know how to describe it, that I think I can turn into a novel or a short story. I have a file in my computer called, not coincidentally, Ideas, and it's full of ideas. And the Coulter Shaw series came about because I'd read an article that I found fascinating. The U.S. State Department is offering they may have tracked this fellow down, but a terrorist in the Middle East, they were offering $25 million as a reward for information leading to his discovery. You know, what happened to him after that? We can only speculate. Whether they go to arrest him with a warrant or there was a drone involved, that's the State Department and the CIA's business. I was fascinated that there was that much money. So I did a little research into rewards and found that it is a real phenomenon. Now, they're offered by the federal government, by the state government, municipalities, and by private individuals as well. And generally, the bottom line is that the police do not want you arming yourself and going out and tracking down this guy with an assault rifle. The reward is phrased, as I mentioned just a moment ago, for information leading to the arrest of this person. But I thought, well, what if somebody, a Coulter Shaw character, for instance, decided that, well, no, he wanted to strap on a gun, or Coulter Shaw is not, he owns weapons, but he's not a big shoot 'em up kind of guy.
Yeah.
But go into the field and use his intellect and his deductive skills to maybe track down the bad guy, or to find the missing child or the missing older individual, grandpa who's wandered away from home, or maybe a missing briefcase or a missing objet d'art or something like that. And so I did some research in this. I probably typed, quote, reward seeker, end quote, into Google, and it came up 0. So I thought, I'm ahead of the curve. And it, by the way, is not a profession. There are bail enforcement agents.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do, they kind of track down
Different.
idiots at, and if any of you are these idiots I'm talking about, I'm not giving my address. I don't mean you. I mean somebody's watching the show and saying, "Hey, honey, I skipped bail and he's calling me an idiot." But they don't show up for a warrant, and it's a little drug charge or something, and they're stupid enough to hide in their girlfriend's basement. There's not a big challenge there, which launches me into the second part of your question. Why does he do this? Well, as we learn, as the stories go along, Coulter Shaw doesn't really care very much about the money. He may have resources from other sources. I don't want to go into that, but he doesn't care about getting the reward check. And in fact, his business manager, a rather colorful woman named Velma, who with her husband Teddy run the business side of Shaw's operation. She'll say, "Well, okay, you're back from the assignment. Where's the check?" He said, "Oh, I forgot about it." Well, he didn't really forget about it. The people who offered the reward couldn't afford it. So he said, when they have money, they'll send in a check. It's like Atticus Finch, if you recall, from A Mockingbird. Well, he would represent someone or help someone out legally in the small rural southern town, and they couldn't pay, but he would find, fresh put up preserves or a fresh basket of oranges or something from the crop. That's kind of Coulter Shaw. But more important than the money is that he is the self-described restless man, and he needs challenges. And to him, a reward is like a red flag pin in the map saying, there's a problem here that the authorities have not been able to solve. And he is drawn to that challenge. In that way, he's like Lincoln Rhyme. To each of the men, boredom is the worst crime that could possibly occur to them, the worst sin of all time. And so Shaw is driven physically to go find the challenge. Lincoln Rhyme is driven mentally to go find the challenge.
So, Jeff, a stranger comes to town who helps the police and private citizens alike. As you said, it's a familiar archetype, but you've given it a unique and compelling spin. And during your writing career, you've written 43 novels or 45. It's a number I would aspire to, or any of us would aspire to get to. With that number of original and fresh protagonists, how do you go about ensuring your characters stand out, and not only with from works of others, but from your own?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, because it's a segue into something else I want to bring up. And I want your viewers to know, my books don't digress the way I do. I kind of jump around. That's why I outline. So I keep focused. But it's a very good point. A few years ago, I was listening, I think, to an NPR podcast, and the person speaking, being interviewed, was a neurobiologist, I believe. It had something to do with the neurosciences. And she said that the part of our brain that emotionally responds to the people we really know, that is our people we're involved with romantically, our family, our coworkers, and also people we're afraid of or that we dislike, our enemies, or maybe a mugger, for instance. The part of the brain that gives us an emotional kick there is the same part of the brain that does the same with fictional characters. Well, up until my reading that, I was a bit cavalier about creating characters. I focused on the protagonist and the villain, and even then, I gave them a little short shrift occasionally because I wanted my plots. I'm a plot writer. Nobody does 140 page outline, 140 pound outline. I might aspire. One hell of a.
Don't do that.
One hell of an outline.
Oh my gosh.
That would be like a David Foster Wallace book, you know, like. But anyway, 140 page outline without caring about the plot. That's what's so important to me. But reading that or listening to that, I thought, you know, I can't afford to let the characters slip, because the best plot in the world is useless if you don't care about the characters. If you don't have that electric wire between you, the reader, and the character in the novel. So since then, that was about, well, maybe one Lincoln Rhyme and two Coulter Shaw books ago, I have been spending much more time on my characters. But again, not writing page after page of narrative text about them, revealing them through dialogue, through action, through what they do, through their physical quirks. And so I have been writing what we call it a Bible in the business. A Bible is a biography of the character, each character. And that goes into the outline too. So some of the outline is not all plot. I mean, it's most, it does have these biographies of the characters to bring them to life. And in fact, today I was working on my new Lincoln Rhyme book that will be out next year, untitled as yet, and dealing with the villain in the book and giving him a quirk after quirk of personality, so that I'm not going to say whether he survives the end of the book or not, but I imperil him quite a bit the same way I imperil the heroes. So they're going to be on the edge of their seat saying, you know what, I don't like this guy. He's a villain. Boy, he's a very interesting villain. And I'm going to see if Deaver kills him off in the end.
And don't make him one-dimensional.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, the classic example of the one-dimensional villain is, and you know, think of a bad made-for-TV movie or a bad thriller. The main villain is head of a drug company or a bank or an oil company. Say no more. You don't have to say anything. Give them that job and they're the villain. And who's the henchman, the bad guy? They have my hairstyle, except ponytail and maybe an earring. And therefore we know that's the bad gunman. It's, you know, it's mystery writing light.
Click, turn that one off. Sorry.
My unofficial statistical analysis indicates that 99.9% of attorneys are in some shape or form also fiction authors. And we've had a number of those on the show. And legal briefs are a whole other art form, truly. What was it in your legal training that may have had some influence in your amazing ability to craft, which is the opposite of what attorneys typically do, is entertaining fiction?
Well, if you've ever been to court, I do have to say entertaining fiction does sometimes figure in a trial. But we'll put that aside for a moment.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good, it's a very good question. I went to the University of Missouri Journalism School, and I got a Bachelor of Journalism degree. And I did, well, let me back up even a little further. I always wanted to write fiction ever since I was a little kid. I wanted to do that. But I also knew I had the foresight to realize that there really were no prodigy authors. I know Mozart was, you know, composing at 4 or 5, and presumably Jackson Pollock was spattering paint on canvas at that age. But writers need to live life. They need input before they can output. And so I knew I was not going to be a writer at an early age, nor did I want to be. I mean, I wrote all the time. I knew I would not be a published and a professional author for a long time. And I gave it to my 20s. Circumstances made it a little later than that in my 30s, but still, I had that in mind. And so I would look at the whole arc of the schematic of what my career might be, and I found, I like writing. Maybe I'll go to journalism school. That will help me learn how to write, which it did. I write in a very pedestrian style. I'm not speaking of David Foster Wallace, and sadly not with us any longer, but one of the greatest stylists of all time, Annie Proulx, who wrote the Ship News.
Oh yeah,
wonderful book and wonderful writer, great stylist. Cormac McCarthy, a great stylist. That's not my writing. I write very meat and potatoes prose, but it gets the idea across. So I'm fine with that. But I thought, what I'll do is go to journalism school, become a writer. It'll help me hone my craft of writing, and teach me interview skills, which will come in helpful when I'm a novelist, I hope. And then I decided, well, I want to write about something specific topic. And I wanted to get a job with the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. And it really helps if you have an adjunct degree in addition to your journalism degree. And so my grandfather was a lawyer. So I thought, well, I'll go to law school at night. And then I'll apply to the Times papers as a journalist to cover maybe the Supreme Court, like Linda Greenhouse does, Maura Eliason on NPR. And so I went to law school, and all the time planning to write as a journalist. I did well in law school, which would come as a shock to any one of my undergrad professors, because I liked the topic. It was exciting and fun and a challenge. And so when your grades go up, the law firms come to the school and recruit you. And so a Wall Street firm said, well, Jeff, this is kind of an interview process, of course, but to make a long story short, Jeff, they said, we'll triple your salary if you come work for us.
Wow.
I waited probably 3 or 4 seconds before saying yes, and then I did. But all the while I was writing, and when I was attorney, I was writing. And what the writing taught me was what I described earlier, the organizational skills. Because, whatever you see on TV, on the wonderful legal shows, LA Law, Boston Legal, and I'm sure there are others. The Good Wife, I think that was one, wasn't it?
Right, it was.
Oh yeah, just love that show. But the reality is, there are rarely surprises, either in the courtroom or during a business deal. Everything is planned out ahead of time. And there may be a surprise witness, but then an adjournment while the judge gives the other side the opportunity to examine the witness and so forth. So the reality of law is a little bit slower than what happens on the shows. But what that taught me was you plan everything out ahead of time. Long outlines about the case, long outlines about the business closing that's going to happen. And that is what I incorporate in my writing right now.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
Sticking with your career, there was about 4 years between your second John Pelham novel and the release of the novel that so many people first really jumped up and said, oh my gosh, this is amazing, The Bone Collector. What happened in those 4 years? Did you know you were on the cusp of something kind of transformational for your career, or was it just a matter of you were busy with life and it took you longer to write that book?
No, actually it was kind of a timing thing. I've written a book a year ever since I started writing.
Wow.
Sometimes there are contractual issues, sometimes publishing issues. So I've never flagged in doing that. But there have been times when I have not been published, and I have left publishing companies because of that. If I cannot get a publishing company that agrees to publish me once a year, I will not go with them. Bone Collector was typical of any of my books. It takes me a year to write, with the exception of Garden of Beasts, my historical thriller set in Berlin in 1936. And that took me 2 years to write, but I was still publishing a book a year at the time. So that one I started working on while I was writing another book. But no, The Bone Collector was very typical. I spent 8 months researching and outlining the book, and then I spent about 2 months writing it and 2 months rewriting it. Ernest Hemingway said there are no great writers, there are only great rewriters. And I firmly believe that. Each book of mine is rewritten 40 or 50 times before I send it to my editor.
Wow.
Actually, before I send it to another human being, because I hire freelance copy editors, well, line editors and copy editors.
Yeah.
And your viewers who may want a course in how the process works, the author writes the book, and then there's what's called a developmental edit, and that's when the editor, his or her editor, reads it over and says, well, this is good, but maybe we need another murder here, or maybe you have too many murders, or maybe the guys.
Jeff, you can never have too many murders, by the way.
Oh, I did that. I did that once, and then I had like 4 murders in the book, and then what happened was I said, "Oh shucks." Well, I didn't say shucks, but you can.
We'll take that.
We can say, "Oh shit."
Oh, you can say that on here.
Oh yeah, of course.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh shit. Now I've got to get the crime scene team in again. I'd already killed 3 people in that book. And I've got to get the crime scene team in. I got to come up with all this evidence. And realistically, with murder and death, less is more. When you see these stupid thrillers where somebody pulls out a machine gun and mows down, dozens and dozens of people, it loses the impact. The more personal the crime, the better it is. So. So anyway, I was working on the book. Oh, where was I? What was the question again? I'm sorry.
It was excuse me. It was regarding the space between your second John Pelham novel and The Bone Collector.
Oh, right. So I was working on books the whole time then, and I got to the I was working on The Bone Collector. Oh, I remember what I was saying. So the backing up to say how the whole process works. So I come up with the idea. And then I write the book, go through many, many rewrites, and I can talk about that in a minute if you like. Then it goes to my editor, and that's the developmental edit, which is the where they may talk about the number of murders, or they say, well, you said it in Seattle, and somebody just said a book in Seattle. Can you move it to, I don't know, Park City, Utah? Not easily, but it can be done. And then it comes back, and I make those changes. Then it goes off to the line edit, and the line edit is generally the same editor who will say things like, well, you happen to use the phrase, I'm picking this at random, is all a lot. And I'll tell you what that means. It's kind of a Southern convention where somebody will say to another fellow, did you really go to the bank that day? And he said, yeah, I had to pick up some money is all. And it's just kind of a convention you hear. And he'll say, Jeff, I saw that you use that 32 times in a book, and it gets a little wearing. So that's what a line editor does. And he or she will help you, kind of smooth out the language. But comes back and you make those changes or you don't. Generally, I make them because I respect the editor. Then it goes to the copy editor. And the copy editor is the one who says that, Jeff, you had your hero drink, 3 double bullet bourbons. And then,
ooh,
I don't see any problem with that.
My type of guy.
then pull out his gun and shoot a bullseye at 100 yards away. And the copy editor would say, my experience is that I can do that with 1 glass of bullet bourbon, but 3 glasses, no, that's not going to happen. Things like, and I had a scene once where my character in LA had to drive from Burbank to, let's say, Santa Monica. And he drove there at like 5 in the afternoon in a half hour. Well, if you know anything about LA, that ain't going to happen. It may happen with the lockdown going on, but that can happen then. So that's what copy editors do. And then finally, there's the proofreaders. So and the proofreaders compare the manuscript against each version of the manuscript to make sure that no typos get in. So. That's a long answer to your question about the process of why there was a bit of a delay, but what happened when the books got going again.
Yeah.
Okay.
But continuing with all of that, recently we've spoken with several authors whose novels are being adapted for film and television, and some of them have active roles in that adaptation process. Your own books have graced both TV and big screen going back to the 90s. Do you see a shift in Hollywood with regard to authors becoming more important in the production of the films?
It's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. I have had no interest in being involved in the production. I'm very comfortable. I'm in my wheelhouse or comfort zone writing books. I do it by myself. I have, it's a joint effort after the book is done.
True.
And as I mentioned, the editorial process, but I can sit in a dark room and write for 8 months. I'm never happier doing that. I socialize, of course, I see people, but I'm never happier doing that. And a movie, a TV series, is a product by committee. And I love film, I love TV, but it's not my skill set. And for instance, NBC did the Lincoln Rhyme, The Hunt for the Bone Collector.
Right.
Yeah.
Just finished 9 episodes, and we hope it'll be picked up again. That's still up in the air. And the showrunners, Mark Bianculli and VJ Boyd, called me up, and we just chatted about the show a little bit, unofficially. I'm in the Writers Guild for a different situation, but I wasn't helping them on by contract. We just chatted about it, and then they went off to do their TV show, and I went off to continue writing on the book. And I think Clint Eastwood said, "A man's got to know his limitations," and my limitation is I write acceptable books and short stories, but to be involved in a TV crew, I don't think I'd be very, very good with that. I heard a great story by the wonderful writer Don Westlake, who wrote, very prolific writer, mystery writer primarily. Yeah. And he had some, let's say, less than felicitous movies made out of his books. Downright goddamn bad movies made of one of his books. And a reporter came into his office to talk to him about it. And of course, the question came up, and the interviewer said, "Well, Mr. Westlake, what do you feel about what the movies have done to your books?" And he was a very larger than life theatrical kind of fellow. And Westlake got this shocked, horrified expression and spun around in his chair and looked up at his bookshelves behind him, which had copies of all of his many books. And he turned around and says, "Oh, phew, you scared me. The movies haven't done anything to my books. There they are." Readers are perceptive enough to know that if a movie shines, if it does justice to the book, that's not the writers. No kudos to the writers. That's the director. And if they do a bad job, no shame on the books themselves. And in fact, some movies have exceeded the books.
True.
I think.
Rare, but it happens.
What's that? Sorry.
It's rare, but it happens. You're right.
It is rare. Yeah, it does occur. It does occur sometimes. I think let me see. I had an example. It's gone right out of my head now, but it does in rare cases.
This is probably sacrilege in some quarters, but I actually like the movie LA Confidential. I love the book LA Confidential, but I think the movie's just more.
There's a perfect example. Yeah, Elroy he's a great writer, but he's a dense writer. And I mean, the novels are dense. He himself is not dense. But the movie just came together so perfectly well. I really thought it was perfect. Oh, the one I was thinking of was The English Patient.
Oh yeah.
That was a very good movie. Yeah.
That was really good.
Far better than the book.
The novel was sprawling. It was very good.
Yeah.
But to turn the entire novel into a film would have required, I think it lasted the entire length of the Second World War. And I may be misspeaking now, but it was an epic novel. And the film boiled it down and picked the good parts. And then, of course, it gave us Elaine in Seinfeld saying, "Just die, will you? Just die."
Wait a minute. Did you just throw
Through
Seinfeld
restaurant?
quote?
In English
I love
patient.
it.
That's excellent.
I'll work Seinfeld. Well, I was actually teaching a course once. I teach my course in writing often. This happened to be at a university, and I was not on tenure. It was I boiled it down. It was a 1 day. It was a 1 hour course in the creative writing department at I think it was Virginia Tech, and my general course is 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, but this was just for the course, and I was improvising a bit, and I said to the students, well, you've heard me talk about writing now, and I mentioned the outline process and my idea of achieving emotional, impact with the writing. What do you think my influences are? And one student said, Dashiell Hammett, and one said, Raymond Chandler. Another mentioned John Grisham, and then some crime movies, famous crime movies as well. And then I saw this young student, and she had a smile on her face, and so I didn't know if she was going to hit it right on the head, but she said Seinfeld, and that was the answer I was looking for, because comedy and thriller writing are very similar. They have the same goals. It's all about the unexpected, and Seinfeld has 4 subplots going on simultaneously, each somewhat interrelated because they weave back and forth. And then at the end, there's the big twist that kind of reconciles each one of those. And you may laugh at a Seinfeld joke, or you may gasp at a crime story when all that comes together, but they're really not that dissimilar.
Really good point. I once upon a time did a little stand-up comedy, and I will say that there's nothing more terrifying than standing on a stage and doing stand-up comedy, because you can do the same show one night that you did and kill, and the next night, depending on the audience, nothing, crickets and such. So it is terrifying. So for me, it's exactly like a thriller.
When I do my presentations, I'll do it. I'm not talking about my course now. I'm talking about a presentation at a conference or a keynote speech of some kind. It's comedy. It's all comedy. It's helpful information. Sometimes it's inspiring. Sometimes it's about writing. Generally, it has to do with the creative process. But my goal is to make the audience laugh. Even at book events, I make them laugh. It's not about it's not about reading from the book, the most dangerous thing an author could possibly do if you want to lose readers. But I will write everything out, and I will spend hours and hours, days and days writing a funny routine. I would never in a million years get up on stage cold, or if I tried to memorize it, my memory isn't the best in the world, never was, and even now it's worse. But when it works, there's nothing more exhilarating. And when they just plain stare at you, that's it. I'll tell you, fast forward. I was in Japan, and I had my presentation prepared, and of course, an interpreter. I don't speak any Japanese, except domo arigato when they bring me the big Sapporo, or Kirin, or Sapporo. The big Sapporo. I was referring to when I went like this, the beer. There's also Sapporo wine, I think, or what I don't drink that much, but
You have to explain to us.
Anyway,
No, we get it. Don't worry.
I'm in the presentation, and here's the audience, 90% Japanese. It's a big presentation. My books are popular in Japan. So I do my presentation in English, and then I pause when I came to a funny line. Well, I could see, roughly a third of the audience laugh, because the English is well spoken in Japan, in the urban areas at least. And so then my interpreter would interpret the joke, and another third of the audience would laugh, and the audience would just stare at me, because Humor does not really translate any other language.
2 out of 3 ain't bad is what they say, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I could care less. They all bought the books. So.
It's even better. I was going to say Hall of Fame, but no, you're good.
Well, Jeff, you survived the main portion of the interview. Main portion of the interview.
Let's have a drink.
This next part might be difficult for you because you've given some of the most thoughtful answers I think we've ever had on the show. And as we like to say, this last part is your mom always says, think before you speak. Well, this is the part where we say, speak before you think.
My rule is the 24-hour rule. If you read something on Facebook or your friend says something completely stupid about you might happen to be in office. Again, I'm not going to. The 24-hour rule is that if you want to not alienate your friend or family member or maybe your dear partner who differently than you do about some things, just give it 24 hours. I don't have that luxury here. Is that correct?
No, that is correct.
That's right.
Oh gosh, no.
But these are not that deep, or I don't think so. So I will start. You have 3 questions from each of us. You have been wrongfully accused of murder. What fictional attorney do you hire to defend you?
I would hire the Paul Newman attorney from The Verdict, the movie The Verdict.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Okay. Now, some of our listeners may not know this, but Jeff is a folk singer / songwriter. What song lyric are you most proud of writing?
I wrote I have more than like 10 seconds to answer this.
Yeah,
question.
for sure.
Okay, all right, good. I was not as successful. I don't have a very good voice, and I play guitar, functionally well, but I mostly liked writing songs. That was my thing. And obviously I'm a writer. I like writing songs. I've written hundreds of songs. A few years ago, I'd stopped performing many, many years ago, but like 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote a book called XO, as in Hugs and Kisses, about a young woman, a la Taylor Swift, who was stalked by a fan. And I thought, well, why don't I haul out those old skills and write an album of country western songs? And I hooked up with a team in Nashville, and we cut the album. And I didn't sing. We hired a wonderful singer-songwriter named Treva Blomquist who performed the songs because they were done supposedly in the novel by the woman who was my Kaylee Town, who was my hero. And the songs, by the way, have clues within them.
Oh.
So that the readers might be able to figure out what's really going on. But we recorded the album, and it's on Spotify and Pandora. And the song I'm most proud of was called Your Shadow. You know the wonderful song that the Police did, Every Breath You Take?
Sure. Which
done one way is a love song. And done that minor key is kind of creepy.
Creepy, very creepy.
Exactly. That's exactly what I did. Oh, and can I tell you another story about this album?
Do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All your viewers out there can go track down if you like. It was nominated, one song was nominated for a Hollywood Music Award. And oh my God, this was just the best thing in the world. And then I learned that Kanye West was also nominated for that same category. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go to the award ceremony and let him try to take that award out of my hand.
Like Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but then I saw him, and he did he did, I don't know, somehow a shirt off magazine spread, and the guy is cut and buff. And I would have been like, here, Mr. West, take, no problems, just don't hurt me. Sorry, what's your? No,
that's great. So my final question is, do you have a favorite current songwriter?
Kanye West.
Kanye West.
Yeah. Besides Kanye.
Funny you should ask.
I have to tell you, you're gonna think lame, but I love music, but I don't listen to a lot of it now. And if I do listen to it, I tend to go back to the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to the subject of musicals. And that's going to bring me to answer your question in Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Okay.
Because I cannot, when I lived in Manhattan for many years, I would go to every weekend, I go to the theater if I could, off Broadway, off Broadway. And even Broadway is off Broadway, which doesn't make any sense because I don't think there are actually any theaters on Broadway, but we get the idea. Times Square theaters. And I just absolutely love Hamilton. One of the best things. I think that, like, Breaking Bad, I think is the best TV show. Hamilton is the best musical, at least, subjectively speaking for me.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely love it. So
There's nothing lame about Lin. That's a phenomenal choice.
Yeah.
Agree.
All right, I'm up. Besides you and I, can you name another well-known author from Old Mizzou?
Well, okay, I'm going to hedge this one a little bit. I'm going to pick, I think John Chancellor went there, journalism school.
Yep.
I believe he wrote, the famous, No Longer With Us, I believe. He wrote I believe he wrote, I don't think it was a biography. I think it was a book about journalism or about politics. You're going to have somebody go online and check out. And see
to check that out.
That's my answer.
Okay.
James Rollins.
James Rollins did,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Did
Yeah.
he go there? Seriously?
He did too.
Oh, okay.
He kind of graduated between you and I.
We haven't had anybody from Rutgers.
Well, there's a reason for that.
I had a faux pas.
We're talking
in
about
a book
literature,
once.
Chris.
I had a faux pas in a book that got caught at the very last minute because I just, for the hell of it, I don't know why. I said, well, okay, somebody was from New Jersey. Okay, they graduated with honors from Rutgers Law School. But I guess they couldn't because there isn't one.
Oh.
So
There is one. It's in lovely Newark, New Jersey.
Well, there is a law school? Seriously?
Yeah, it's in
A
Newark,
Rutgers
New
Law
Jersey.
School?
Rutgers,
My copy editor said there wasn't.
You were
They're wrong.
I've still got her number. Don't worry. I'll take care of it.
I'm going to check
I'm
it
sorry.
out.
24-hour rule. Okay, I'm going to be good.
Listen, no one in New Jersey reads anyway. Don't worry about it.
Oh, you said that. I did not.
Yeah, friends and family, come at me.
All right. Since you and I are both from Chicago,
Mhm.
what one word or any word best describes a typical Chicago winter?
I can use multiple words.
Sure.
Okay.
I think you said word or phrase or word. Well, I'm going to.
He did
Whatever.
say it.
It's your show.
Okay. Anyway, it's a good answer. Game of Thrones.
It's so true.
It's true.
It's so true. Oh, and that's why I left. All right.
Yeah, me too.
Number 3. Which novel, yours or someone else's, anyone's, has yet to be made into a feature film but should be?
There is a. Oh, are we talking fiction or nonfiction?
Let's open it up to whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a writer friend of mine, John Gilstrap, who is.
Yep, we know John.
Oh, you know John? Okay. He wrote a book called 6 Minutes to Freedom, which is about the rescue of I think it was Delta Force rescue of an operative in Noriega's regime in Panama. That if you read this book, you will sit on the edge of your seat because the fellow, I'm not going to give a name away because I don't have permission to mention his name, but the subject of the book is you don't know whether he's going to survive or not. There's all kinds of political shenanigans going on. There's all kinds of military shenanigans going on. And it has movie written all over it. So, John, if you're out there listening to this, and I hope you are, and if any producers out there listening to this, 6 Minutes to Freedom by John Gilstrap, it'll be an instant bestseller. Think Black Hawk Down with let's say a happier ending.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not read that one.
I've never
read that.
I do remember though that I think we blasted Metallica around Manuel Noriega's compound.
Yeah.
No.
We were going in to get him. So, Jeff, you mentioned that Seinfeld was one of your influences. What's your favorite scene?
Well, I could give scene. What I'm going to do is answer this twice.
Sure.
Because it incorporates my favorite scene, but it's the entire episode. The episode known as Pinter, which is a reference to Harold Pinter, who wrote a play that went backwards. And it's the scene, it's the episode about the wedding in India that was shot by Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld that goes backwards. It starts at the beginning and then works its way back to, I think, maybe a month or a week, whatever it is, earlier. And it was one of the things that inspired me to write my book, The October List, which is a thriller that goes backwards. I think my favorite scene in Seinfeld is where we've been going backwards, remember? And so we see Kramer holding a white stick. Just, that's all it is, a white stick. We don't know what it is. And this is at the beginning of the show, but remember, that's later in time. And
Right.
then we go on, and we go on, and we go on, and then we cut to Kramer again, and he's holding up the stick, but it's got one of those huge, circus lollipops on it. Now we see where it came from.
What happened to that lollipop?
Yeah.
The brilliance of that show is just mind-boggling.
Is
It
that
really
it? I
is.
think I've counted. That's 9 questions. Oh, I guess not. All right.
Continuing with television, you are hired to rebrand the TV series Breaking Bad. Your first job, though, is to give it a new title.
Mhm.
What is it?
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's good. I'm not going to ask questions about the cast or something like that. About okay. Oh, this is not really creative, but because owing to some shows we see on now, I'd call it The Bad Place.
The Bad Place?
Okay, there you
Good
go.
place. Yep.
Well, the Good Place, which is
Yeah.
quite. Well, wait, is there a bad place? I don't know.
No.
Okay,
No.
well, there should be. And by the way, I have a copyright to that and trademark, and I'm an attorney.
Done.
You guys wanted to run
Listen,
with that.
I just wrote that down. I wrote TM in small print right next to it, so you're good.
No. Sorry, TM, you have to register. I was a patent and trademark. You have to register the trademark. Anyway, my attorney will be calling. No worries.
Don't ask the Secret Service agent for any help with
don't-
trademarking.
It's only the second time we've had somebody threaten us with their attorney. No, just kidding.
Today.
Second time. And so, although you're drinking a gin tonic right now, Bombay?
No.
right?
Bombay Sapphire. straight
Bombay
up with
Sapphire.
with lime.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I did see earlier that you were drinking, not in our interview, but you had some wine. What's the better red wine? Is it in Italy, France, or Napa Valley?
Well, I'll have to just step back because what you saw me drinking was a rosé.
Was it rosé? Yeah, I was going to say it was rosé.
Languedoc. And of course, the rosé is most grapes are dark. It simply is, the color has to do with how long you leave the skins in them. But what's the best red wine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the best red wine, oh my gosh, I'll have to go with this. I would probably go with a Brunello, which is an Italian wine. It's a Sangiovese. It comes from the region of Italy. It's earthy, it's nice. Second only in Italy to Barolo, which is from the Piemonte region. That's the northwest. The French, I mean, who can argue with the great 1855 classifications, the Margaux, the Saint-Estèphe, Saint-Julien, and so forth. Those have to sit for a long time. Those are Cabernet.
Right.
Others, can I interrupt?
Do it.
Story?
Do it. Let's hear it.
Okay. Have you all seen the movie Sideways?
Yes.
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 Brilliant movie.
Now, well, and it's okay. You can, apparently, we're not censored. I'm on the shit list with some people because I wrote a book a few years ago.
Do tell.
Okay, that had this reference to it. Now, if you remember, in Sideways, the book was a bit different from the movie, but in the movie, Paul Giamatti is bemoaning the existence of Merlot. And he wanted a good cab. I think it was Cheval Blanc. That was the one he was walking around drinking with onion rings in the movie. And I took a little offense. Not he's a great actor, but I took a little offense to the fact that he was dissing Merlot. So, which is a grape just like Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Grigio, Pinot Gris, the Chardonnay. But he was dissing it because I think the script called for him to diss it. Well, I put in my book that a phrase something like this: unlike a recent popular film, which denigrated the Merlot grape, the Merlot grape is in fact the sole grape in what is perhaps the best and certainly the most expensive wine on the planet, the Chateau Petrus, which is a Merlot-based grape on it's the north side of the river. The south side of the Gironde River is Cabernet and Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon. The north side of the river is the Merlot grape. And it was kind of a throwaway line. I didn't think really much about it. And then I started to get emails. You bastard. How is this wonderful? How could you possibly like the Merlot grape? And the bottles start even before they're ready to drink at $1,000. And so they're really they're wonderful wines. So I don't know how I got off on that. I guess we were talking about the French wines and so
French wines, yeah.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law would say different. He's privy to the Côtes de Rhône in France for reds.
Châteauneuf du Pape. My favorite wines are, I think French are probably the Burgundy, the Gevrey Chambertins, the Côte de Nuit, Côte d'Or. Chablis, my favorite white wine. It's an unoaked Chardonnay. I don't know why we Americans have to put it in these casks of wine and butter. I'm sorry. I thank you for.
We're not very refined.
Thank you for inviting me to the Onophiles. Someday we should talk about books if you want to get into that.
Oh yeah, that too.
Listen, books and booze and alcohol and wine go
exactly
well together.
I just wrote. That's trademarked. I just wrote down books and booze. That one I do have. So.
Okay, so here we go.
You did survive the zaniness that is our lightning round and the inane or zany. I don't know how you want to put it, but
I thought it was great fun. And I'm sorry, that was frankly it was a double Bombay. I don't think I'd go one step beyond that, but I think I at least acquitted myself safely and didn't embarrass myself too much. Although Giamatti and who did the film, was that Alex?
Sideways? I forget.
I was trying to think of the guy's name.
Alexander Payne, was that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Alexander Payne.
Anyway, they're calling their attorneys right now, and I'm.
Well, let's raise your glass to Jeff.
Yeah, but as I told you, I want to say something. There was something in this episode that was one of my favorite parts that I want to make sure our audience pays attention to, and that's that you said that prior to your last Lincoln Rhyme novel, and prior to your last Coulter Shaw novel, you started really working.
John Pelham, I think you were.
Okay, no, you were talking about how just a couple novels ago you started working on character. I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought we were going back to the Lincoln Rhyme. And to me, that's both inspiring and humbling because, as we said, you have 50 million novels sold, and you're still very conscious of getting better. And that's one of the things I love about this world we live in with writing and reading is that, like golf, you never master it. You're always constantly trying to get better and to improve. And to me, that's a testament to both, you as an artist, but also it's a lesson for all of us out here who are writing our first book, our second book, our third book, or our first short story, whatever it is.
Well, thank you, Sean. That means a lot to me, and it is true. I tell my students, it's a continuum. You never achieve what you want to achieve, but that's the good news. You keep striving.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Jeffrey, thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers, Jeff.
Well, cheers to you all. Thank you.
Cheers.
This is great fun. Actually, we should just do this and have a talk sometime. So.
We're all up for it.
We are definitely there for that. All right.
I'm going to drink some water.
Here we go. This is the ending for Jeffery Deavers. And it's Sean Cameron in his school plaid shirt. He's going to do a great job. Look at him.
Where's the image of him on the side?
God bless him.
Profile image.
Grade 6. He was a little big for his age.
When I can go.
Dude, I'm so glad I'm not doing the end.
And here we go in 3, 2, yeah.
I want to thank Jeffery Deaver for coming on the show. What a phenomenal show. Great conversation. I'm going to start over.
Already? Come
Kiss
on.
those cheeks.
I had everything I was going to say, so you guys kept talking and talking.
That's what
Well, that was
we
the voices
do.
in your head. We were quiet there for a second.
No, you weren't.
Dude, seriously, if you don't hurry up, this is going to be bad.
This has got to be. All right.
My
Take
wife's
2.
going to kill me. Hurry up.
Ready? Yeah.
I want to thank the great Jeffery Deaver for coming on the show tonight and talking about his outstanding career of 45 plus books. Thank you, Jeff. Everyone else, tune in every Monday for a great episode of the Career Reviews. Guys, to you.
Salud, boys.
Salud. I can't drink anymore.
Boom. I can.